Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my full disclosure channel. Many different subjects of gravity are spoken and shared and whistleblown on this channel. We already have interference, unfortunately. I want to tell you guys that I've got an Apple here, Apple Mac, whatever, Trevor, never going to get one again. And I'm blocking the very corner, the far right corner of my screen because a light has come on, a camera has come on inside that shouldn't be coming on. So even if you guys have everything covered, you think the little dot there is covered. I've got my finger over the dot that they tell us is the camera, but actually it's the space beside it. See that? The space beside the camera is actually where the camera is positioned. So be careful of all of your gadgets. They are listening. Who are they? I'm going to introduce my two friends here. I'm going to start with Max Lowen, who's speaking at Galactic Spiritual Informers on September the 19th and 20th and 21st, 2025. Max Lowen, welcome back, my darling. Please, as much as I know it's difficult to do, give us a synopsis. And guys, do not have your kids in the room. This is a graphic satanic abuse ritual warning. Go, my love.
With you, and I'm really honored to be able to come to your conference and speak. Um, I speak out and have been for a few years. Trafficked, being put through satanic ritual abuse, being sacrificed, and it's not okay. And, to that effect, I do remember, I have a memory prior to incarnation where I was at this galactic meeting and I volunteered to come here and to basically dive into one of the darker parts of this cult, which is the Vatican. When you're not here, when you're a higher dimensional being, you can't interfere in a planet when things are going on like it is here, but you can incarnate as a human and you can go through things so that later you survive, you heal, and you expose it. So that's my mission. Well, I have two missions to help people heal. I'm a psychologist, I've done my own healing, I work with trauma, but also to whistleblow, to talk about the truth because our entire planet is under deep mind control and the dark forces have controlled it. I think that's shifting now. Um, so basically, what I went through is I have my Italian side of the family, our generational satanic ritual abuse family. I was tortured in underground facility in Rome. Torture meaning everything from being buried alive, waterboarded, raped, beaten, having to watch children be sacrificed, animals, put through all kinds of experiments, being forced to kill, and all kinds of other things. So it's pretty brutal. And I was also taken to the subterranean levels of the Vatican, where I was in attendance to rituals under there that are in homage to Lucifer, because the Vatican is their god is actually Lucifer. And I've seen children brutalized so that their adrenaline is going. And then they're sacrificed while alive. They're cut open. I've seen the blood collected and drank in the people in attendance, which are all kinds of VIPs and elites. And from other rituals, I've been taken to these black tie parties where if you've ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut, it's pretty much like that, except in that movie they didn't have the children in there. But you get brought to these parties with other children all dressed up, and then these perpetrators choose whatever child they want to rape, based on gender or race or age. I've been at outdoor parties that are hunting parties where we're supposed to run and hide and get hunted. I've seen many, many children sacrificed, their blood drank, they're cooked and eaten sometimes. I went through something that a lot of other survivors have been through where I was impregnated a few times and then the fetus was taken out of me almost at term and sacrificed. So really, it's pretty horrific. There's just so much I have been through at the hands of these people. I did get out. I did my healing work. I trained in psychology. I've worked with trauma throughout my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s now. Um, and now I really want to speak out and let people know what my experience is because we need to stop this, okay? Because children are still going through what I've just described. So thank you for letting me share that and be here with you and my dear friend Rachel.
Thank you, Max. It truly is absolutely beyond imagination and thinking. You couldn't even make up, if you thought hard, as a regular human with a good heart and a good soul, the things that you have experienced and endured. And thank you. It's not easy to do a synopsis as I asked you to do, and I appreciate you giving what you've just given. So, dear Rachel Vaughn, now it is your turn to give us your synopsis. Again, I have respect how difficult it is, but please, for those that have never seen you before, in Australia. Rachel Vaughan, please speak.
So thank you, darling. Lovely to be with you and Max today. So my childhood abuses occurred in Australia, in Adelaide, South Australia, the down under of down under, and the Satanists love that sort of thing. So my father was a Secret Services operative, and as such, he had impunity from prosecution. So he would steal children off the street, or there would be things organized so that he would have access to children. He had access to state wards, many state wards, and he would use he and his cult would use them in satanic rituals. I was used in satanic rituals from a very early age. I was also used in MK Ultra theta psychic programming. So I work as a psychic now. I've turned it all around. So I use that, for the benefit of humanity. I was medically experimented on. I was trafficked and used in blackmail honeypot operations in tunnels beneath the ground. There was a tunnel and a bunker and a hidden cellar where I grew up. I've mapped and proven the existence of those tunnels. They're extensive. There's 3 different types. Water tunnels, old or telecommunications tunnels that still exist, and World War II mandated tunnels. So that's all proven. My father had 2 properties. There are many children buried there. The state government and the federal government will do nothing about exhuming all that evidence, which is extremely frustrating. Over 19 years, I've whistleblown on what was going on. I've named names. I've contacted federal police, local police, politicians. I've met with politicians. Many have tried to help me. I eventually was compensated last year, victim of crime compensation. So my father's perpetrations against me were so extensive, and I have so much medical documentation, they had to eventually pay me out. But they're still pretending that what my father did was, something that should be ignored. There was a big dig for the Beaumont children that he was involved in the murder and processing of. And they're buried at one of his properties. That still isn't being looked into properly. There was a big furor about that at the beginning of the year. It's been squashed and quieting down again. The 60-year anniversary of their disappearance will happen in January next year. And I believe that they're probably going to say, oh, well, it's been 60 years, let's just put it to rest. Or they might actually, because of the number 6, because they like to mess around with the numerology, they might actually do the right thing and dig. So we're sort of just waiting to see what happens there. I've spent so much of my time and my effort and my energy. I've given so many interviews. I've spoken to so many people, done so much, police reports and all the rest. And it's just, someone said to me recently, because of the medical experimentation on these state wards, and many of them died, it's quite possible that it's a matter of national security that these things have not been properly unearthed yet. So my father was involved with a lot. He told me in 1983 that there was this plot to bring about this zombie apocalypse. Now, that was with prions. Now, he partnered with Papua New Guinean doctors in the research and medical experimentation that I was subjected to with these prions. And the spike protein with the things in the arm mimics a prion. So I think that it was all in preparation for what's going on today. And I just want to say, even though obviously I was programmed to believe that we're coming into some sort of apocalypse. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think that that's been ameliorated. The human body is amazing at healing. We've lost a lot of people through these things, but I don't think anywhere near the number that they expected or wanted. So yeah, that's a bit of a synopsis, I guess, of what I've been through.
Oh my goodness. It is just unthinkable and unimaginable what you ladies have endured to this very day. And the fact that, like our friend Kathy O'Brien and Gloria Masters in New Zealand, the work that you do now is a testament to the deep, deep healing and recovery that you have done. And even that said, there still are trigger points. We're human, those of us, which is pretty much everyone who's gone through something, most of us not to the level of you ladies. It still at times needs that work, that emotional rest, that recognition, to go within and to, oh, I have got spirit bumps again, all over me. Whoa. Wow, that's really powerful. You guys are really bringing something up today. I mentioned to you earlier, Rachel, that I interviewed Sasha Stone. I got him on my channel because I haven't seen him for a long time. And I was trying to think to myself, I really need to talk to a mate who is as bombastic and courageous as me, who isn't going to then infiltrate other people in other groups like the galactic groups or the satanic groups, and he's just such his own person, not linked to any specific thing, but a humanitarian fighting. And of course, people say he's this, he's that. Anyone that steps out front, anyone that comes above the parapet, there's always fools and village idiots, and really horrible, unhealed, angry people that don't want us all to speak out. Well, it's too late for them. And he was talking about years ago how he was supporting a brother and sister. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, I know who he's going to say. And he couldn't remember any names. He was like, I helped them. Their dad was a nobody, but in the satanic realm, he was a somebody. And they took 3 children. It was one of the biggest crimes in Australia. And the children, when the dad died, came out and they said, the children are buried here on our dad's land. And to this day, they have not exhumed, even though you've given them the address and actually where those 3 beautiful children lay. And it's one of Australia's most unsolved mysteries. But because the police have been involved and higher ups and judges, etc., have been involved. Now, you mentioned the word state ward. In America, that means foster child, just so we're clear. State ward is a foster child. And after he finished speaking, I said to Sasha, you're talking about my friend Rachel Vaughn, who I'm actually interviewing in about an hour on the channel, along with Max Lowen, who exposes the Vatican and the hot atrocities in and under the Vatican. And he said, oh, give her my love and tell her I love her and she's an angel. So that was really nice.
You know, these people just get absolutely hammered. Anybody who speaks up about these sorts of things or gives a platform to it get absolutely hammered.
I've got some questions raised by what you were both sharing in your synopsis, but I do want to say that the 3 of us have discussed and noticed that even people, let's say, satanic ritual abuse survivors who have exposed royalty, politicians, Vatican, the highest level of personnel that put themselves at that position and lower, they have attacked you guys. Say, apparently I'm your handler because I've had you on my channel exposing your story, whistleblowing, loving and supporting you as we've all become friends. There are people out there managed by others who are also at a big platform, and it's just got ridiculous. It's like, stop it, knock it off. It's like, enough already. Like, it's like, haven't you girls gone through enough? Haven't you boys suffered enough in your own world as little kids? And now as adults, you have to attack Max Lowen, who's exposing the Vatican, and Rachel Vaughn, who's exposing Adelaide, the Beaumont children, and other horrors in Australia. We're not going to stop exposing. None of us care to be famous. It's not easy stepping out and doing the work we do, and especially surviving what you two have survived. Max, what do you say to the people, the women that you once knew and, at one point were friends, as I was in my, environment? What would you say to them about the attacks and saying you're a handler, Max, and you're this and you're that?
Do your healing work, is what I would say. Because, look, we've all been so victimized. It's really a miracle we're alive and we have good hearts and we have, not done anything negative despite what happened to us. So I have great respect for anyone who has survived these atrocities. These things shouldn't even occur on Earth. It just shouldn't be in existence. But so my respect and compassion goes out to everyone who has survived this. I just want to preface with that. However, and this goes not just for us survivors, but for every human on this planet.
Yeah.
We've all been traumatized. It's a continuum, it's just how much trauma and what kinds. We have to go inside and do our healing work. And we have to take personal responsibility also for the perpetrator parts that have been put in us, for all the there's just so much to deal with, and they call it shadow work because, well, no one really wants to look into their shadow. I found things about myself that I didn't like, but you have to have the courage, the integrity to do that healing work, to take responsibility for yourself. Then that actually results in inner freedom. And we're all mind controlled. This entire globe is under deep mind control. The Vatican is one of the arms of the cult that is responsible for the control of consciousness, right? So I understand why people have these issues, but and you have to imagine that, is it just because this person is unhealed? Are they being accessed and used to go at other survivors? Because of course they're going to cause ruckus within the survivor community. That's a great way for them to take us down and discredit us. So my policy is when people are negative in this way, is I just don't associate with them. I send compassion their way, but it's all frequency and levels of consciousness. And right now on the planet, we're going forward massively. The top of the hierarchy, in my opinion, isn't even here anymore, right? So we have to focus on that. And there's going to be people at all degrees of this. And when you're mismatched in frequency, there's always going to be a boom and a separation of people. So I expect it. I expect people within the community to go after each other. There's a lot of unresolved trauma there. So I don't take it personally. It is what it is. We're going to get attacked because we're doing the right thing and speaking out. So I would just, to go back to what I said, I would just say, do your healing work.
Yeah, perfect and beautiful. Thank you, Max. Rachel, same question. What would you say to these people?
I think that the most important thing for people, Max said it in a nutshell, but the one thing that really sticks out to me is that it's a program for us all to attack each other, particularly in the community of people who've been trained to and have gone through these satanic rituals. I saw it in my own family amongst my siblings. And this happens whether or not you've been through SRA or not. If you've got a pedophile in the family, they will pit every single victim against one another so that they can't corroborate. And so for those who are in that community, who are attacking others, like myself and Max, like you, who are helping to expose all of this, people like Kathy, try to remember that that could be a program, and that might hopefully, sort of remind them that they're just doing the work of those that set them up to do this. And it doesn't help anybody. We need to be working together. We're all on the same side. Yeah.
We really are. And I wish for everyone watching this to recognize that every single group of people with whatever subject, they are being pitted against each other. They're fighting, they're lying, they're exaggerating. There's implanted people who are there to disrupt and hurt and lead people away. And it's what the deep state programming did. It is a global program to make us all fight with each other. And so if people are fighting, falling for it. You fell for it. So let's just take a step back and stop attacking and fighting. I am not these ladies' handler. How utterly ridiculous. And again, I'm at the point of like just stopping completely addressing, the la-las, the people who've lost the plot, because they are so vulnerable and they're so gullible and they're so easy to distract. And, we've discussed other people in the past and we're like, yeah, we just send them love. We send you love, guys, and compassion, and knock that shit off at the same time, because you can only get away to a point, if you've been in any way kind of harmed. And we are sorry that happened to you. But there are millions of us who've gone through similar and worse and less. It's not a measuring stick. It's a fact that there's a mass healing happening as we raise in consciousness on this planet, and everybody raises up. And the more we raise up in ourselves and our healing, then obviously the spells, the black magic that's falling and failing, the binds that tied, the utter upper spells can no longer hold. Reptilian, grey, coming down to the satanic occult. Now they are all turning on each other at the highest levels. They're all telling each other secrets. They're using people to tell their secrets if they're not actually coming out directly. It is a dying beast, and we're at the bottom of the shift of change. But again, people must recognize when you fight, when you attack, and when you decide, let's say, for example, I'm not going to go to that conference because people I used to follow are arguing. Don't be a fool to yourself. Don't not advocate for yourself and your own seeker's journey. Don't let gossip stop you attending a beautiful environment where you are going to raise in consciousness. You are going to heal. You are going to meet your soul tribes. You are going to be amongst people that you don't have to explain yourself to, that are going to believe your stories. For example, my conference, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, where both these ladies will be in attendance. I swear to God, I just saw a little fairy fly over the top here. That's whack. I told you earlier there was like real crazy energy around me today with you girls coming on again. Yeah, and so Max is speaking, and she'll be speaking a lot about her experiences, naming names, giving more information, because we can't tell it all online because we get blocked. This channel is so shadow banned, it's insane. That recording light in the far right hand side of my screen is still on. Because they don't care anymore. They're listening to everybody. They try intimidation, but they lost. So best they start naming names themselves and standing up and getting right with themselves, because no one is going to not be named or spoken to or pointed out. And I was saying, when I was on this week with our friend Kathy O'Brien, who's also speaking at GISIC, we were saying that, when she was taken to one of the NASA installations and she was injected with a CIA NASA drug called Tranquility that they tested on her body to see how compliant it would make her. Then they rolled that out to other slaves in the American government, White House, Pentagon, that even the doctors and nurses, even the security guards that strapped her down, they are all complicit. And nobody gets to say, I was just doing my job. So they best know what time it is, and better for them to come forward and give information, even if it's anonymous. It is time. And don't people worry about just me being a whistleblower. There are millions of us now doing what I'm doing, which is hosting two beautiful ladies, sharing the worst atrocities unimaginable to humanity. And also, Rachel Vaughn will be at GISIC. Now, she's not speaking. There isn't a single speaker slot left. I couldn't even jam her in for 5 minutes, nor would I want to, because your message is so important. But I'm so happy that you're coming with Max and you'll be there. And so people at GISIC will get to meet you too, Rachel. I'm very happy about that, my love.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's wonderful. And I'm just overjoyed. And obviously I came into the wasn't expecting to be there. So, it was very late minute. So I'm just overjoyed to actually just be able to be a witness to everything and not actually have to worry about getting on stage and give a presentation. So that's actually really lovely. It'll be really nice change for me.
I love it. And what I've done this year, because of all of the ridiculous insanity, the fighting, the dishonesty, and the way that, let's say, the galactic community, which I'm part of, and part of the world, we all are. I'm not just one subject area, but I've noticed the galactic community, the horrendous fighting and ridiculousness and the infiltration and handling. And I said to my team, my guys, like my speakers, Elena Danan, JP, Tony Rodriguez, Nikki Allen, before, and other people, recognize that as we step out with our expertise and we're exposing the horrors of the elites that have been running this planet, that our inner circle will be attacked. Every single one of us, and you on this screen, and others we know, we are targeted individually. They want to break friendships, they want to spread lies, they want to make videos and blame someone else for making those videos. It is ridiculous and insane. But I think people are definitely smarter than we sometimes give them credit for. And I think people are really seeing now. Max, I want to come back to you on a horrendous point you made earlier. Again, guys, do not have your kids in the room. Do not be selfish. Put your headphones in or listen later. This is going to get dark. Max, you said that you were impregnated several times. Was it the same person? And when the baby was taken from you at almost full term, are you okay to share how that happened?
Sure, yeah. So one of the times, and they do schedule things because they're very into special dates and solstices and numerology and all that. So they had scheduled a gang rape in a forest near with a big bonfire. Honestly, I don't know how many men it was. And so I was impregnated from that in this particular occasion. So then, fast forward, it was a ritual done at Easter. So they love to do rituals again on all these different days. And I was in a courtyard at the house of the doctor who did a lot of these things, these abortions. And um, I they had my family eating lunch at an outdoor table. And then they had me, pregnant. I was 14. And they nailed my palms to a small fig tree that was out there in the courtyard. I remember it was the sun being on me. They attached electrodes to my breasts and my genitals, and they would repeatedly shock me. And then, the scene is so the family is eating lunch there as if this isn't happening. So that's part of the psychological aspect of the torture. Um, then I was taken after I don't know how long, I was taken inside and I was put in a tub with ice and ice water. I was handcuffed. There were two faucets. I was handcuffed to both of them, and I was injected with something that obviously induced labor. And I was able to free one hand just as this little tiny baby floated up. And I was able to sort of grab it and it was a boy, and try and lift him out of the water. And right, so that's kind of an example of the way that they did that particular extraction. And yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So dreadful. I've never heard that story before. I know you have so much that you've gone through. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Whew. Rachel, you mentioned the tunnels. I know we've done several broadcasts together, and the tunnels that you were trafficked through. Can you give us some idea of where they are, maybe what they're called, and what kind of things happen inside these tunnels? What do the tunnels look like? Are they lit up? That kind of thing. Can you paint a scenario for us, my love?
Yeah, so my house in Edwardstown in Adelaide, South Australia, the house that I grew up in, had a old brick kiln underneath. It's quite a large sort of cylindrical with a flat floor. There was concrete on the floor and up the sides. And through my research, I'm a glaze and kiln technologist. Like I've got a trade as a pottery maker, so I knew You can't have concrete inside a kiln. You can't fire concrete. It spalts and, it's useless. So I knew that, and I could smell the concrete too. So, when you have memories like this, you smell the mold and you smell the salt on the bricks and you smell the decay of the bricks, and, the concrete had a different smell in combination with all of that. So basically, in the World War II mandate, 1938 pre-World War II mandate, Australia had this mandate to build a tunnel, trench or bunker within 20 feet of the back door of every house, business and meeting place. And where our house was on in a very industrial area. So we had really big workforces in that area. So they needed really big bunkers. Now this brick kiln was really big. The reason it was underground is because they dug out the clay in the area as they're making all the bricks and the terracotta tiles. Beaumont tiles being later on, Beaumont tiles. It's very interesting that all these different names that come up. I'm not saying that Beaumont tiles was involved with anything to do with the Beaumont children, but it's just really interesting that there's these terracotta tiles. It used to be the Wonderlicks terracotta tile factory that the kilns are built for. So they're all underground, because as they took all the clay out, they built the kilns at that lower level. Then they brought fill in and covered them all up, and they were used as cold stores and, underground stores. A lot of people put their rubbish in them. Well, when the mandate came in that we had to have all these bunkers and tunnels and trenches, because they thought that the Tokyo Rose, the Japanese, were going to moor their boat off Kangaroo Island and fly up South Road, which is right near where I grew up. They had this mandate, so all these tunnels and trenches and bunkers were built. Old edifices like these old brick kilns were converted to bunkers, and the way to convert a brick kiln to a bunker is to put concrete in the bottom to shore it up and up the sides. My father, being the person that he was a telecommunications officer. He used to listen in on people's phone calls. So that was his day job, and that was something he was very overt about. So he was a line tapper, which is, ASIO Secret Service type thing to do. The property had been owned by a telecommunications officer prior. Then my father owned it. He built the house over the top, put the shed on the brick kiln, and then had a hidden cellar. So a lot of people didn't even realize there was a cellar there. I was in that cellar a lot as a child. There were also 3 ship's ballast tanks that he put in between the cellar and the brick kiln with a small tunnel. Those ballast tanks, the reason why he put those underground, under maritime law, sex with children is legal, even if the ship is in dry dock. So he took parts of ships and put them underground so that he could do things to children down there, and it would be legal in his mind. And in those little ballast tanks, because there were 3, and there were doors in between, you couldn't hear anything. The kids could be in there and you couldn't hear them. I know because he put an identical one in our laundry as our pantry cupboard. And I used to go in there and make a lot of noise, and people couldn't hear me on the outside. So he was a very complicated individual. So these tunnels led all around the area. They also led and joined up to some of the Telstra tunnels. And Telstra tunnels are everywhere, under every main street, every main road in Australia. So anywhere where you see metal plates on the ground, particularly where you've got 4 of these metal plates on a footpath, on the road, that's a Telstra tunnel, and they're usually 6 foot deep, about 2 meters wide, maybe slightly thinner depending on the number of plates on top, and they go for miles, absolutely miles, and they're everywhere. So there's those as well, and then there's the walkable water tunnels. So I went through all 3 of those different kinds of tunnels as a child. Some of them were quite skinny, and I think they were the World War II tunnels, because some of them did still have water in them, or before the mandated tunnels, I should say. But I remember at one point there was this slatted light and they would meander too. That these tunnels had to be like in a zigzag kind of pattern. They didn't go in straight lines like the Telstra tunnels. So we'd be meandering through as he was taking me through for these honeypot operations. And there was this slatted light on the walls. And I remember telling this to a friend, Dee McLaughlin, when she was doing some articles on my case. And she came for a foray into Edwardstown, and she noticed these weird metal, they look like an obelisk, shaped just like a Freemason's obelisk, but metal with slats on the side that are on the main roads along Cross Road and South Road, very close to where I grew up. Macklin Street, where I grew up, is just basically kind of on on the corner, but a few streets back from the corner of Cross Road and South Road. And it's exactly the striation of what I described of this slatted light. So these are air vents for those tunnels. And they're on the main road. You can see them. There's one outside of St. Francis of Assisi, I think is the church on Cross Road. Oh, sorry, on South Road. So they're everywhere along that area. And, you know, you wouldn't notice these things unless you know what to look for. I hadn't noticed them. I didn't understand where this slatted light was coming from, these lines of light along the tunnel walls. But when Dee found that, it was like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. 106 boys went missing within a couple of streets of where I grew up. My father was processing those children. And again, I believe under national security, perhaps, this is why it hasn't come out. It's not just because pedophiles and judges and, you know, really, really high up level people in my very small state were involved. I think it's because this medical experimentation was very, very important and it was leading up to what's happening now.
So many things that come to mind, and so many questions I know other people will have. One thing you've mentioned a couple of times is the term national security. And what these monsters at the top do in every organization is they claim a level of national security, which then takes away. And then back to Kathy O'Brien, her little girl was taken because she was so badly, horribly affected and harmed by George Bush Sr. from the age of 2 and others. And yes, that is true. And yes, she has proved it. And so they took her little girl, and they said she was taken for national security purposes. And they put little Kelly into a mental asylum for absolutely years. They kept mother and daughter separated for years. So people have to be careful when they see something that is national security and understand that this again is a way that the elites dominate the information and repress it and keep it, you know, from going out. Thank you for that, Rachel. Max, I want to come back to you, darling, if I may. I always feel so guilty. I say to Kathy, gosh, I can't bear to, but we have to bring this information out. You know, we all have a duty, and you guys are so brave. When you were mentioning the horrendous, let's say, abortion ritual that you went through, your parents are there. Were your parents fully aware of what was happening to you?
My father wasn't there. He never would go to Italy when we went. And then eventually, when my parents divorced, I was living there. At that point, I was living there full time, but just with my mom. So it was my mom's family. You have to keep in mind that they are MK Ultra, they are tortured, they are so dissociated that it's so traumatic even for them to be in that experience. That's what the psyche does. It just splits it off to cope. And so they 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 don't even remember that that happened. My mother doesn't remember anything. Now, she exhibits behavior that shows you what she went through, but she herself did not do her work, did not recover her memories. And so that's kind of the situation, especially when it's generational. Everyone in the family is so dissociated that, you know, and it's hard for people, so sort of regular people, to understand how, on the one hand, my life was that of a diplomat daughter. You know, my grandfathers were ambassadors, generals. My one grandfather has pictures with JFK all the way to Bush Sr. in his office, you know, before he died. So I went to the private schools. I grew up in all these countries. I skied in the Alps and the Andes. I was taken to operas and theater and dressed in the finest clothing. But on the other hand, there's this, you know, I would be tortured and then dressed up for a cocktail party with politicians. So there's this split that happens. And even myself as a child, I would just have to block out what had just happened to me and perform at these parties, you know. And I was trained in that beta sex kitten programming too. You see, these people are at the top levels of the globe are pedophiles, okay? And so they don't want to rape a child who's screaming and fighting them and crying. They want a child that looks like they want this and enjoy it. So we're trained as small children how to sexually service these creatures that, like to rape children. And then it's also very convenient to be used in blackmail, right? So then these things are filmed, and then everyone has blackmail on everyone else. And even within the cult, they have different factions of the cult, and they have blackmail on each other as well. So this is the way that it works. And then I was also trained with a photographic and audiographic memory so that it goes together with being a sexual slave, then to absorb any kind of conversations or information. So it's very complicated. It's called trauma-based mind control. So people can look it up. The Jesuits and Josef Mengele are experts on this. So you traumatize a child, and then their psyche splits, and then you program alters to do specific tasks. So if I would flip into that beta sex kitten alter and do my job, right? And this is how assassins are created also. So some people will be programmed to assassinate, and it'll be like a date, maybe a code word or something, but it's an alter. So they're not aware of it until that alter is triggered to do their job. So all these lone wolves that assassinated different presidents, they're MK Ultra to do exactly that. But then if they get interrogated, it's safe because the alter that did it then goes back under, and the front person doesn't remember anything. So it's actually it's a hard thing to comprehend, but it's absolutely possible. And these people know the human being, they know the brain, they know psychology. You can create a person who is dissociated enough that they don't know what this part of them did 5 minutes ago, right? And so you can appear normal and yet be put through all these things that I described. And I mean, if people looked, they would see that I wasn't exactly normal as a child. I was shy, I was depressed, I was terrified all the time. I didn't, speak. And a few people throughout my schooling in different countries sent me to psychologists because they said something is wrong with you. So it's there if you have eyes to see, but also it's not there. And a great example of this are people in the entertainment industry, for example, Hollywood. Okay. So if you look at someone like Britney Spears or Miley Cyrus, they were put through that beta sex kitten programming. Okay. But they're so mind controlled, part of it them doesn't know it. I think when Britney Spears shaved her head and started to act out, she was breaking through the programming. So they put her in a psych ward and reprogrammed her back. So the programming does break down. And if people want to hear great short testimonies of a bunch of SRA survivors, go to 50voices.org. But basically, that shows me that right now, because of what's happening on the planet, because of the consciousness rising, all this deep mind control and programming is breaking down. Rachel, myself, and many, many others have spoken out, and that wasn't supposed to happen. Okay. We were never supposed to remember and speak out. And then, of course, they inserted like a suicide programming. So when I first started to speak out to my therapist, I had this really, really intense push to kill myself. Actually would drive to the train station, get on the platform, it would say jump, and then I wouldn't. But it was that powerful that it would get me all the way to the train platform. And then I kind of broke through that programming. So, the good news is our program is breaking down. The collective of humanity's programming is breaking down. We're seeing people become much more aware about everything, the medical industry, the food industry, everything, right? So it's not foolproof, and they layer it in. So year after year, as you grow up in these cult families or are MK Ultra'd or taken, they're reprogramming you over and over and over again. But it's the human psyche and the human soul are more powerful than anything these dark, insert word here that I probably can't say on camera, can do to us. So it's happening. People are waking up, they're healing, they're coming into their full power. And so it's the end of these people. But yeah, it's really difficult to imagine how someone can seemingly have a normal life, but then be going through these horrific atrocities that we were put through. But it's very real and it happens.
Yeah, that's so true. Just to take a gentle step back, if it's okay to ask, because I know people will be wondering, when the little boy came out of you, what happened? Who was there? Who was watching this? And what happened to the little boy?
It was the doctor and my uncle who was part of this underground facility. Um, and uh, he was sacrificed. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was 14. It was from rapes. In a sense, it's so good this little boy didn't live to get tortured and suffer. But it's still a huge loss. You would think it isn't, but it hurts, you know? It's like this when you make a being in your body, no matter how old you are, no matter what the circumstance, it's a real loss when that occurs, and when I had my own child, who's now in her 20s, I did feel like she was that same soul, but she finally came to me and I got to have her and love her and raise her and protect her. And it healed a lot of that, But yeah, no, it's pretty brutal. And that's what they do. See, that's part of the trauma bonding. With the Jesuits, Zvali has described this. She was raised in a facility, actually. So, and what they do is like they will force the women at a certain age, they will impregnate them, and then they will carry the baby to term, birth it, and then a few weeks later, they will be forced to sacrifice that firstborn to Lucifer. Okay. Now, this is in the Bible, it's everywhere. This is standard procedure. This is what they do in the ninth circle. So there's a lot of that kind of breeding and sacrificing babies that happens. And to what Rachel said, the maritime law making it legal to sacrifice children, that's why they do a lot of these sacrifices on these yachts in international waters as well. They have these big parties, these big orgies where they rape children, and then they sacrifice them. They chop them up, they throw them overboard for the sharks, but it's all done in this way so that there's going to be no consequence there. And then the other way that they do it is in these tunnels, and underneath the Vatican, there are tunnels that go all over the world. There's a direct one to Israel. There's tunnels everywhere. There's tunnels below every country on this planet because this practice of sacrificing children used to be out in the open. You can see art with it, with Moloch. And, even I was in the Vatican Museum last year with my daughter, and there was a tapestry right there depicting these men grabbing babies from women and decapitating them. This is an ancient cult. Then what happened at some point is it went underground, but literally underground. So nothing has changed in thousands of years except the practice has gone underground. These creatures uh, are Satanism is the inversion of the true source creator God. It's the inversion of nature. So what do they go for most? Human newborns and babies, because that's the closest thing to God that you can have. And so they love to rape and sacrifice babies. And eat them. That is one of their primary things.
It's just beyond imagination. I wanted to briefly say before I come back to you, Rachel, that those now may be wondering, okay, if there are tunnels that go all over the world, what is the mode of transport? The mode of transport, with some regard, is what we call a magnetic levitation train or a
Yes.
maglev. And these are trains that work on magnetization. They literally float above, and there is old technology. And again, just because you haven't heard of it and you can't imagine it, people out there wondering where this information is coming from, we've had it, we've seen it, we know it's a reality. These trains can go at speeds way beyond Japanese bullet trains, way beyond the French TGV. They go at magnificent speed. You can cross America in a matter of minutes. Again, just because you ain't heard of it doesn't mean it's not happening. It's time to catch up. And people like Max Lowen here and Rachel Vaughn are testament to the tunnels and to the transport systems and other horrendous realities. Rachel, what would you like to share at this point that you feel is appropriate to add to some of the whistleblowing that Max is doing here?
Well, I think it's really important. I love what Max was saying before about, a lot of and you've said it before as well, that a lot of these creatures at the very top are no longer here. And you can see this constantly. I mean, I'm utterly amazed at how many people I know do not recognize that the politicians that used to be around look very different. And it just blows my mind because that was part of my training, was being able to recognize faces really well. Um, and it's like these are not the same people. So yeah, I think we need to always remind ourselves, as horrific as what Max and I are sharing today is, there is always hope, and we are definitely coming into a time where we've got to keep fighting. We've got to keep working at this. You don't just give up and just let it all happen. We've got to keep fighting. But I think there is a frequency shift that's going on that makes it very difficult for those who get puppeted by these negative entities, however you want to describe it. They can't really handle this frequency right now. So the Earth is going up in frequency. An enormous amount of light from the sun is coming in. An enormous amount of transformation is going on. So we can't have these sorts of creatures, or we won't have these sorts of creatures controlling things. We also have at the moment, these little babies that are being born now are exceptionally high level souls. The telepathy tapes is just one example of what these souls are capable of. These little ones have obviously come through a little bit early, and they're vocal now, and they can telepathic, and they explain how things work in the multiverse. Obviously, that's part of the reason why these things are being put into little children at such an alarming rate, something like 80 odd per child, which is insane. So I just want to give people hope, as dark as all of this is. I think the reason why Max and I survived, and so many, of our friends have survived, is so that we can speak out about this now, so that this can all just be completely out in the open and it can never happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you expand a little bit on the telepathy tapes and those that have never heard of that?
Yeah, so I wasn't over enamored with the second series because it got a bit woke, but the first series of the telepathy tapes is just amazing. These autistic children, or autists as they describe them, a lot of them find it difficult to articulate, but the people around them can pick up on their telepathic communications. It's absolutely phenomenal, and the information coming through is exceptionally wise. It's knowledge that that is just, you might have one in a generation of people that can share this sort of wisdom. These beautiful young people, some of them are children, but some are older, in their 18, 20, around that age. They just have knowledge that's just exceptional, just absolutely exceptional. When you hear what comes through in the telepathy tapes, you like the goosebumps you were getting before, it's constant. It's like when your body knows that something is true, you get this amazing feeling. I think that's part of the reason why they're trying so hard to put these things into children, to try and prevent this new generation of these exceptionally high level, top level souls coming in for a human experience. They're trying to shut them down. What they're actually doing is, when you shut certain senses down, or shut down certain abilities to communicate, you actually heighten others. The sign of the sage is the person with one eye occluded. It means that, if one faculty is taken away, and for these children a lot of it's speech, something else opens up, and for them it's telepathy. And one of the most amazing phenomena that you learn about when you listen to these tapes is the fact that these children all go whether it's remote viewing or whether or not it's an astral traveling experience, I'm not 100% sure, but they all have an ability to go to one location, which they call the hill, where they can all socialize. And they can leave their body and go and have this socialization, communicate with one another, come back, tell their communicators, whoever it is, that's living in their life, their mother, their friend, their brother or sister, whoever it is that communicates on their behalf about those experiences. And then that can be qualified and corroborated. So it's just an incredible thing. Humans are amazing. We are so amazing. We have so many gifts and abilities. With so much effort is made to dumb us down. And it still hasn't worked. And the thing I love most about this, and I don't find this amusing as such, because I know that what they're doing to these little children is horrific, but it doesn't matter what they do. We shine. We shine. These children are shining, and they're just showing us how much more they can do, even if their speech is removed. Amazing.
It's just like,
And I just want to say about telepathy, that is our natural condition. Okay. So the reason that they've had us use words is because with words you can lie, but with telepathy, you cannot lie. So they've dumbed us down but everything is frequency. And, when I was a child, I was fully telepathic. I would communicate with animals, that were trapped there in the facility, and I would be able to mentally communicate with people that were there being tortured. This is natural, though, to all of us. So as I call it, this simulation, this matrix is breaking down, then all that suppression of those natural abilities, telepathy, self-healing of our bodies, having psychic abilities, multidimensionally traveling, manifesting, all that is natural and organic. It's going to come back. And the children that are being born, they're born now into a matrix that's got a lot of holes in it. So it's not the net over the human consciousness is not what it used to be. And so I share Rachel's optimism. And that's why I have no fear. I'm not upset. I think it's going to be extraordinary the next 10 years. I don't even know what it's going to look like. But those demonic interdimensional entities at the top of the pyramid, they, like Rachel said, cannot exist in the frequency we have already. And there's still a lot of people that are low consciousness and asleep, but that's changing by the day. I never thought in my 61 years of life that I would hear the word deep state thrown around the way I've heard it in the last year or two. I'm astonished. It's like, and then I will say things about the Vatican, and I have these little clips on Instagram, and people will say yes, and they know, so it's the cat is out of the bag. These people have succeeded with secrecy and deception. Keep in mind how many years they had to repeatedly torture us and mind control us. And it's breaking down. They're done. They are absolutely done. And I think you can see that out there because everything is chaotic and crazy. So it's the lower layers of the hierarchy that are still executing their orders, but they don't have the top people to guide them anymore. So they're making all these mistakes. They're contradicting themselves. And I forget who said it, but you're right. It's not the person, it's the role. Okay. So, like in the United States, we have the theater of politics. We have Blue Donkey Productions that starred Joe Biden, who probably died right in the beginning of his presidency because that thing was not him. But it doesn't matter. If the main actor dies, the understudy will take the role. Okay. And then we have Red Elephant Productions starring Donald Trump, who's portrayed as the savior, who's going to undo all the bad things that they're both two wings off the same bird. It's theater. Politics is Hollywood for ugly people. It's theater. It's all a show to keep us divided and going in circles, but it's breaking down. Everything is breaking down. And I think we're going to regain ourselves more and more. And I don't think these creatures can stop doing what they do. They just only know how to do. They're like that Energizer Bunny commercial where it just keeps going. But it's falling apart all around them. And so I'm very encouraged. And I know both of you share that view.
Oh my God, definitely. You mentioned 50voices.org, Max. Can you expand on that, please?
It was a documentary put together a few years ago. Rachel and I are both in it, and they're 15-minute testimonies. Every survivor was asked the same 3 or 4 questions. And what's astonishing when you go watch it is to see people of different ages, different genders, from different countries, none of whom knew each other. And the stories are so similar. The things they do, because they have a playbook. SRA is very scientific. It was the first form of mind control, you know. So the thing about it when you go watch it is you'll go, oh my God, you'll hear a commonality among everyone's story. And again, there's many more than survivors that have spoken out, that have come out, that are not in that documentary. But I think that shows what I just said, that it's all breaking down.
Rachel, when you were growing up and you were meeting people that you didn't want to meet, people that were brought to you for various deeds, did you ever see when you were not trapped and you were walking around in regular life, did you ever see people that looked so nice and so lovely and people seemed drawn to them, but when you got close to them, you felt something that you'd felt dark with the people that hurt you?
Well, I mean, I can extrapolate it to the point of some of the people that hurt me as a child, and I saw hurt other children in a worse way, were actually part of the television industry and the radio industry. So yes, I could see them being lauded and, revered and treated like a celebrity, which, for Adelaide celebrities are pretty tragic. But in the grand scheme of things, like I said, that they're treated very highly here because they're part of bloodline families. So, they, amongst themselves, that they all think they're very, very important. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. And it was very, very frustrating, to watch these people, on television or, hear their voice on the radio. And I knew what they were really about. And that's all part of the mind control too. So if you've got someone who's in the public eye and you have people making allegations against them, they put them in the public eye on purpose, because if you make allegations, they'll say, oh, that person's just looking for some sort of, it's funny, it's what we were talking about earlier, looking for some sort of notoriety. They want to be famous for tearing somebody down. And so this is why you get so many talentless, ugly people in Hollywood, in various places that are, in the public eye, that don't really have any reason. You look at them and you think, how did that person get that job? Well, it's a pretty good chance they're from a bloodline family, or they're corrupted or controlled or a pedophile. And that's how they get into those positions. Yeah, and it's, you hear this over and over and over again. Oh, it's just because that person's famous that that person's making those allegations against them. So they've planned it out pretty well, but it's actually working against them now, because so many of them are exposed and so many are being spoken about. The Diddy files, Epstein files, all of that sort of stuff's sort of exposing a lot of people in the music and Hollywood and supposed higher echelons, and they're all dragging each other down because it's a web. They're all interconnected. Mm.
Max, did you also, as a child, were you able to easily discern, the true vibration of an adult or a child that carried?
Yes, yes. And, recently, uh, the one Pope Francis died. I think he actually died probably a year or two ago, but, they decide when the person's going to officially die. And then a new Pope was elected. And what I know is during that transition, there are ceremonies where children are brutally raped and sacrificed. So it's very difficult. It was very difficult for me to observe this, and everyone thinking, oh, the new Pope, the Pope is seen as some like elevated figure that's close to God, and it couldn't be further from the truth. These people are Satanists, and it's very difficult to watch that. And it's, they have used the being we call Jesus, which I call Yeshua, and distorted. This guy came here. He was a highly conscious being. He studied in Tibet and in Egypt and in India. he raised himself to the point where he could do manifestation and all kinds of other things, and he taught a message of freedom. Okay, he was telling humanity, stop complying, stop doing the bidding of these Satanists. This is not real. The divine is within. Our power is within. He talked about meditation and reincarnation. So they took him, and as Satanists love to do, they inverted everything, and then they displayed him dead and tortured on a cross as the symbol that everybody should worship. And they made a church based on him, which, you know, he had never would have wanted. And this was for political reasons. You know, the Bible was written in 325 years after his death. The Emperor Constantine needed to unify the Roman Empire. There were things fragmenting. So they decided to create this religion based on this beautiful being who was not at all who they now portray him to be. And that bothers me. When I was a child, I used to say that because I would have communication with Yeshua, you know, and he didn't say, I'm the Son of God. You know, he said, we all have God within us. And it's about the Christos. It's about us achieving what we're achieving today, this transition, this leap in consciousness. And so I still today, Danny, I can immediately read. To me, people look like a billboard. I can just feel them, perceive them, their past lives. You know, your name is an energetic signature, everything. Nobody fools me. That's what's made me very good also, you know, as a therapist. I just can sort of feel people. But what I would say is, I'm not that special. We all feel each other, okay? We're all energetic beings. There's no hiding that from each other. It's just that the dumbing down process, you know, between the big pharma and the big medicine and the food and the things they spray and fluoride and all that, it's reduced us. But we all have the ability to discern who another person is. There's a name for it in your neurological system. It's called neuroception. Okay, so they did these interesting studies where they had a screen and they would flash images, and the volunteer was, you know, they had them all hooked up so they could read their body, you know, their pulse and their sweating and everything. And they would show images like of little kittens and puffy clouds and beautiful things, and then they would show a violent image. And, you know, so when people see a violent image, their neurology changes, they get agitated, right? Well, the people's neurology would change a few fragments of a second prior to seeing the image. Okay. So that's what's intuition. That's the gut feeling. The body doesn't lie. The body knows. We know, you know, that little voice told you don't walk down that alleyway at night. And if you didn't listen, then, you know, your gut tells you that person's shady. We know, we all know. So yes, I find that to be, I guess you could call it one of my abilities, but again, I think it's all of our abilities. And you just have to clear out the garbage in your psyche that's in the way of that. And then it's right there.
Yeah, and we got to recognize that every single person living without exception for generations and generations and generations, we've all suffered the same programming. Even some of the most monstrous, horrific, and subhuman people have gone through the lineage to satanic ritualization themselves in the womb. And sometimes I ask the question, should we feel compassion? Well, I don't have any compassion for a human who's fully aware of what they're doing. No, I don't, but they have come in on a level to create psychopath or psychopathy, sociopathic tendencies, etc. On a sad but a kind of happier note, I want to bring it to here. There's a beautiful lady in Ireland. I'm getting her back on my channel soon. Her name's Maureen. Her book is called Girl in the Tunnel. Now, she was, as a child, a filthy pig in her family, helped himself to her little tiny body. And because of that, she became a soiled child. And I think she's in her 70s now. So it was another kind of generation. And because she was a soiled child, she was thrown into a convent. Even in the convent, they wouldn't let this little girl have an education because she was a soiled child. She knew about sex because it had been forced upon her. And they worried that little Maureen might tell other children things they didn't want children to know. So they kept her separate and they used her as a slave. During her many years interned in this convent, among other things, Maureen knew about the many girls who were impregnated over and over again by clergy, the things that happened to nuns. And I really want the nuns to come forward. It really is your time, ladies, to come forward and speak. Bugger Mother Bloody Superior, the monstrous ones, bugger them all. And Maureen came to share that the convent that she was interred in, and there are others as well. Basically, one of them recently, they found 800 tiny baby skeletons. Now, not all of these children or young ladies or young girls got pregnant by accident or were impregnated in other ways. How you the math is never going to work out. We know that there are many clerics, people of the cloth, men of the cloth, and bad women of the cloth too, who have created suffering, ritual abuse, children born behind the walls. That would then these children are 800 bodies. And I remember when I first interviewed her a couple of years ago, maybe longer now, and I said to her, I promise you that me and Luke Eastwood and Elena Danan and others that bring you on our channels, those children are going to be raised up and they are going to be given, burials. And it's happening. It's actually happening. Yeah, in Ireland, it's happening. So I like to think that around the world, these little souls who've been taken and hidden and harmed will have their time, their time in the light, and that the bad monsters that did the terrible things, they didn't win. You know what I mean? They didn't get to dismiss that little tiny body of that child and many other things. Rachel, apart from your dad's back garden that you've described many times with many children buried on that land, including the three Beaumont children, are there other places where there are children buried that would or should be exhumed?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's one location that is still a secret that my brother's well aware of. And there's attempts to make sure that we keep an eye on that, to make sure that they're not just squirreled away. I've mentioned before publicly, first time on Shanti's channel on Aquarius Rising Africa, that there was a sinkhole on one of my father's properties where I saw approximately 50 small skulls. He was collecting them. So, he built a fence out of them and proudly showed them to me one day. I didn't want to see them. There are so many, and look, there's an esoteric or a spiritual aspect to this, which I know you'll understand. When you have when a soul that's having a human experience, or any living thing on this planet, when they have a horrific murder, when it's an untimely one, we all have a soul contract where we're supposed to have, a certain amount of life on this planet. When that's cut short, those souls don't fully move forward. A part of them always stays waiting for some sort of, not retribution, but where it's being solved, it's being sorted out, so that part of that fragment of that soul that's still stuck with that body, still waiting for justice, can move forward. And I think this is part of the reason, on a bigger scale, understanding of why these things are done. If you hold a lot of souls in that limbo, the whole energetic flow of souls coming into the planet, having an experience, and leaving the planet through the doorways that they're supposed to leave through, it makes everything stuck so that the earth cannot evolve, cannot become more awakened, cannot get to a higher level. So my fascination at the moment is all these obelisks, these monuments to fallen soldiers, for instance. And all wars are just massive sacrifices. Every time they name a soldier on one of those monuments, and every time one of those monuments, the epitaphs are read, or the plaques are read, it's a re-invoking of the soul back to that location. This is why the original Australians don't speak the name of people who've passed. They don't share photographs of one another, because it's a capturing. It stops the flow. It stops this incredible flow. that's something that I wanted to mention today, because we've been talking about how things are changing. We're coming to a higher frequency. So many people on this earth are awakening to what's going on. There is a shift at the moment where all of the Freemason controlled ley lines that have these monuments on them, these crosses of sacrifice, these shrines of remembrance and things, the souls that were captured there are being released. So again, this is bigger scale stuff. And obviously being a psychic, you understand. Max is obviously a psychic too. She understands these things. This shift is monumental. It started in June. We're in a 9-year at the moment. So there are so many amazing shifts that have been going on. This is one of them. So those souls releasing, they're releasing that grip on, the justice wasn't given. All of the knowledge around why those wars have taken place, why these children are sacrificed, it's all coming out. And as that happens, as that justice is seen, those souls can move forward. I believe that will happen also for the children that are buried on my father's 2 properties. My brother and I and my sister as well have a dream that those properties will be a monument to those children, but not in a way that you go and say their name and keep them stuck there. It might be that it's somewhere where people can go and say, we'll never let this happen again.
That's so beautiful and tragic. And to think, that, the never happening again, that to never raise a hand or harm a child or a person. People talk about this time of 1,000 years of peace. And of course, Satanic, from thousands of years ago, this has been something, it's not new. It's not the last 70 years. It's been, thousands of years of this thinking and this need for ownership and power and control. It always comes back to the same elements. But we are in a time of retribution is probably the wrong word, and I probably need to look that up to really understand what it means in this moment. But words just kind of drop in, don't they? But the release of everything and everyone, and the true beauty of who we are as beings, and the fact that you as 2 little girls in different countries went through such horrors, and yet you survived, and you both heal people, and you teach, and you counsel, and you do so much for humanity. And Rachel, I mean, I know we've spoken about the work with the ley lines that you're doing, but people need to go look at your websites and really see what it is that you're doing in terms of healing the land and the kind of energetic interruptions, because the Satanics love to mess up the ley lines, dump on the ley lines, always trying to create discordance on our beautiful sentient earth that we live on. We'll bring this to a close, unless there's anything in particular either of you wanted to say on the subjects that we've raised. No? Okay, so Rachel, you will be Max's partner +1 friend, not lover, obviously, just to be clear, because some people at the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. You're both doing a conference in New York, and then you're coming to Charlotte to be with us, to be with me. I can't wait to hug you both. And you'll be there for the 3 days, Rachel, with Max. So it'd be lovely to see you. And dear Max, you are speaking over those 3 days. You'll be on stage doing question and answer sessions with everybody, the other beautiful speakers there. They're amazing, amazing speakers. Could you just give us a slight insight into what it is that you will be sharing on that stage?
I think the single most important thing that's going to change everything is consciousness. And so the Vatican, I'm going to talk about the Vatican and what they've done to suppress consciousness so we can reclaim that. And I'm going to talk about what I know about the global hierarchy and who's at the top, the way that it has all worked, and the way that the entire planet has been mind controlled and taken into this circle of darkness, and how it's changing. So it's people whistleblow about different pieces. So I think I'm a big picture brain. So I want to bring the big picture and how all of these different parts work together, and kind of how this even began and how it's ending.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, with Kathy O'Brien there, it's so important for me as a conference producer to bring people in with such a body of work. I mean, it's horrendous to say you're experts in the satanic occult because you've actually lived it, experienced it, and survived it. But I bring people who bring proof, who bring names, who bring reality, evidence, documents, names, whatever it is, because you have to be able to stand solid in your truth because it's such a responsibility to the audience, to humanity. You have to come from that place of truth and true knowing, not just reading in books or gathering other people's stories and creating them as your own. I think that's just wicked, absolutely wicked, dreadful that people do that. People actually do that. Very, very sad. But I'm just so proud. And, with Kathy there as well, we're taking apart the Vatican with her, with the Pentagon and the White House, and a lot of people's ideas and ideals and false and fake programming that's been installed. It's going to get blown apart, but that's what we do at Agisic. We bring uncensored reality and truth and evidence. So people out there, do not bring your young children. We do not censor. We will not take care. If I see a child, there's maybe one person I spoke to, he's got a son who's very advanced. That's something different. But even he needs to use discernment as to what this child may or may not listen to. So I'm always very concerned about that. It's not on me, it's on the parents if they decide to bring their kids. And I don't want them to bring their little kids because the subject matter here is very evident. And, we'll be going more into it. But just to say, I love you girls. I respect you so much. And I'm so grateful that you're in my life and that we can shine a light. And we can also show that you've both done so much healing work and you're still on your journey and you're so present. You're so present in your healing and with who you are. Rachel, just tell us, I'll put the information underneath the video, but just tell us how people can look at your work and get hold of you, please.
Oh, absolutely. Love you too, gorgeous woman. 6science.com, that's my website with the number 6th science. So find me there. I teach courses, I do readings, and I go to wonderful conferences.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Max.
My website is unbroken.global because we may have all been broken in this reality, but we are unbreaking ourselves right now. I do seminars. I did a seminar on the Vatican, on satanic ritual abuse, on mind control. Rachel, I think, has been to all of them. And now those recordings are available on my website if people want to purchase them and listen. I have a ton of interviews that I have done with people who are survivors and whistleblowers and consciousness warriors, exposing everything, not just the issues, but the solutions. So my interviews are there on my website and they're free. And then I've been interviewed by a lot of different people. So if you want to learn more about me, you can watch those. And I also offer my services as a healer. So if people, are in need of restoring themselves back from trauma, it's a very healable thing. And I can help guide people with that as well. So it's unbroken.global. Oh, and I like to write. So I have a Substack. It's the same name. So I put a lot of articles out about the truth there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you, honor you, and thank you for letting me ask you the worst questions in the world and just being so gracious about it and making my job easier actually because they're not easy questions to ask at all. So I thank you so much and honor you both from my heart to yours. I truly do. And to you, the beautiful audience, I know this is a very jarring, harrowing conversation, but it's one that we must have. And please, can somebody not say to me, it just give it to Jesus? I'm afraid it doesn't work like that, Poppet. And I think it's really, I know, you can't believe it. People still throw out that program, the program. Listen, I love me some Jesus, but we have to do the healing. You can't just give it you know, to anybody, you know, it's got to start here. This is where the healing starts. So, so anyway, so lots of love to you out there, guys. Get your tickets, galacticspiritualinformers.com, to come and see Max, to give Rachel a hug, to come and see Kathy O'Brien, to see Billy Carson, Daniel Brinkley, Elena Danan, JP, Tony Rodriguez. Just go and see the global speakers and the subjects they cover, because every single speaker is bringing a piece of truth, of massive awakening to this collective. galacticspiritualinformers.com. God bless you, ladies. Mwah. I'll see you soon.